Welcome to America's Hope. Thank you for joining us. And right now, we're going to unravel a murder mystery. And you might want to ask the question, well, what does that have to do with America's Hope? Well, as we talk about this story, you'll find out that it has a lot to do with hope. As I've often said on this program, hope is found in the midst of adversity and despair. And sometimes the light is shown in the most darkest of places in order to give hope. So we'll take you back to what happened on Sunday, June 21st, 2020, when 18-year-old Linda Stoltzfus of Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania, was kidnapped on Beachdale Road and later murdered by Husto Smoker. And that's where our story begins, but it doesn't end there, because the people I'm about to introduce you to now have written a book about this. It's called Beachdale Road, where mercy is more powerful than murder. Joining me now are the authors of that book, Megan Schercher and Tim Rogers. Thank you for joining us both, Megan and Tim. You're joining me from Paradise, Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, of course, is the Quaker state. It's a good state in America, and it has a lot of good people. But on June 21st, 2020, something ugly and sinister took place. Take me through the story. I guess, Tim, I'll begin with you, if that's all right.
Sure. Thanks for having us here, Kelly. Yes, that day was one that our county will not forget too soon. It was Father's Day in 2020, and we were really the next day awoken to the news that an Amish girl, 18-year-old Linda Stoltzfus, was missing. And we did not know as a county what in the world happened. This simply doesn't happen around here. For 3 weeks, our county collectively prayed, searched, mourned, grieved. Were gathering search parties together. The FBI was called in. Ground penetrating radar was brought in. All kinds of efforts made to try to find Linda Stoltzfus, all to no avail, and very, very difficult for us to process what was happening. So it was around that 3-week mark where we finally learned that the person who was arrested in, for her kidnapping was my brother-in-law, Husto Smoker. And that was the beginning of our story, but as you said, certainly not the end.
Megan, let me bring you in. You're the co-author of this book. Where does this story tie into your connection and why you and Tim decided to write this book together?
Yeah, thanks for having us. Well, Tim's my dad, and Husto would be my uncle. So we had kind of, as we processed this event and as we went on in the coming weeks and months and honestly years of this event, we had many, many interactions with Linda's family, with her friends, with her parents, with her community on the whole, and were treated with overwhelming grace and kindness and mercy, and truly just felt that we had been given such a gift. My dad and I both had processed some of these gifts through writing and journaling kind of on our own. And so at some point, we both felt that we had been given such a gift that we would like to extend kind of this gift of kindness and grace and mercy to the public, to those who may be able to help. And so that's kind of where this story was birthed.
Megan, on that note, perhaps you can take time out now to describe for the viewers who may not be aware or unaware of the Amish community and the kind of community this is. For anyone living near Pennsylvania or living in Pennsylvania, we certainly have an understanding of how the Amish community lives and conducts itself. Can you explain for most Americans who may not be familiar with this?
Sure. The Amish, they're a religious group who live very, very plainly. And so they, for example, they don't have things like electricity. They do not drive cars. They ride in horse and buggies, which is essentially almost like a horse-drawn carriage, like a horse pulling their buggy behind it. And so they wear very plain clothing. The men have beards that they don't cut after they're married. The women always are in dresses, long dresses or skirts, plain colored, no patterns. Men wear the hats. The women wear a lot of bonnets. And so, yeah, it's a very, very plain community. Lots of Amish here in Paradise, in this area that we're from in Lancaster County.
So Tim, as Megan is explaining, it's a community of people who keep life very simple because of their faith, and their faith is one of a Christian faith, but they keep it very basic and very simplistic. So how could a murder like this happen, and what does that do to a community that is quiet and keeps to themselves in order not to cause any friction or trouble with people outside of their community, outsiders, as they would say?
Yeah, well, one of the hallmarks of the Amish community is what you said: this desire for peace and simplicity of lifestyle and simplicity of faith in some ways. They have a deep, abiding belief in what I'd call the sovereignty of God, and even the ordination of your days, that there are a certain amount of days that we have, and even the day of our death would be ordained by God. And so that is held deeply by many in the Amish community. And even in this situation of what we're dealing with, in what maybe I might look at as a young life taken too early, many in the Amish community might say this was her designated time. As difficult as that might be for me personally to come to at first, it is a reaction that they have to their faith. And consequently, they also want to forgive quickly and want to extend a kind of mercy and grace quickly. And that has been our experience as family members of the perpetrator, of someone who did something so, I'll just say, evil and harmful. To experience that instinctive reaction is very different than what I might expect if this were to happen in almost any other environment.
Yeah, and so Beachdale, the book that the two of you have written or co-authored, Beachdale Road, is your attempt to share your story of grief and as you point out, anger and pain at the same time, but also the unexplainable grace, kindness, and mercy at the hands of the Amish community, and even, I guess, the family of the young girl who was murdered. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. We experienced such grace, Kelly, through this, and it was difficult to put to words. But in our little book that we wrote, we tried to invite the reader into our experience, into what it was like to wrestle with our own pain, our own rage, our own shame, and to have those feelings be met with mercy and kindness from the Amish community over and over and over again was really what prompted us to write and put this out there. I remember one of the first times that we met with some members of the Amish community. There was a group of 4 Amish men who served as a liaison between Linda's family and the broader community that wanted to help. Because in this situation, so many want to help, provide meals, provide support. What can we do to help? And so this group was set up as a liaison. So they offered pretty quickly. They asked if they could come meet with our family. We said, sure, that would be great. Well, the night of that meeting, the day of that meeting, I had met with a friend, and he said to me, well, what are you going to say when they show up? And this was only a couple weeks after Justo had been arrested. And truthfully, in that moment, I was in such, I think we were all in such turmoil about what had happened, still trying to wrestle this to the ground, hard to believe that this had happened, that Justo was responsible. And I remember sitting there at the kitchen table, looking him in the eyes, and with tears in my eyes, I said, to be honest, if 1,000 apologies would help, we would offer them. But what can you say? What can you say? What can help, right? And so as this group came and met with us that evening, in a way, I started the meeting that way. We sat down on the porch outside of my in-laws' house, and these Amish men came in and set their hats down and sat around the circle with us. And I just began, I said, we don't even know what to say. And I said, again, if 1,000 apologies could help, we would offer it. And they stopped me right there. And they said, thank you, but we're not here for that. we are here on behalf of Linda's family and our community to extend our love to you and let you know we hold nothing against you. We want you to know that from the very beginning, that we have nothing but love and care for you in our hearts. And that's why we're here tonight. So we experienced that over and over and over and over and over again in the ensuing months. And that introduced to us a narrative about how grace, mercy, and kindness, it isn't soft. It isn't just for the fun or easy times in life. It can meet pain and even evil in its place and have something to say about it that changes the narrative of how we even see ourselves, see our faith, and maybe see who God might be in this world.